Who Watches the Rewatchers, a Buffy rewatch podcast.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to Who Watches the Rewatchers, our podcast where we rewatch the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where Alan and I sit, or when we sit, it's Halloween Day. How are you doing? Happy Halloween, Alan.
Happy Halloween. My daughter is dressed as a witch. How about yours?
She is actually going to go as a witch as well. She's Agatha, that new Marvel witch.
Sure.
She's going as that. And Colleen, her mother, is going as her familiar, which is a bunny.
Nice.
I can't remember what Ruby's going as. Max is Spider-Man, and I have my trusty Michael Myers mask to wear around. So there we are.
Of course.
Well, today we are getting into some exciting Buffy.
Good. So this won't be...
You there?
No, it's you. I'm so sorry.
Well, I think the voices were catching up, Alan. I don't know something, but
I think so.
I was just gonna say today we're getting into some very interesting Buffy material as we enter as one of our favorite characters enters into the narrative. Spike
is finally here.
Yes, this is season 2, episode 3, and it's called School Hard, and it's a good one. It's got a lot of things going for it. Anyway, yeah, I'm ready to hop in whenever you are. We've tried to record this a few times, so I've watched it several different times, and I think I got some thoughts. You ready to go?
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm ready to go. We open with Principal Schneider.
Yeah, what a very little man. In all ways.
I love this actor. I mean, I've probably said it before, but I love him on this show. I love him on Deep Space Nine. I even love him on Stargate.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Stargate, but yeah, he is very effective. And I think he's starting with that little speech about how, when I'm, as principal, some people want you to imagine him as your principal, your pal. Not me. He's the authoritarian weirdo. And he's given a little talk, and a very threatening talk, to Buffy and the new red shirt, as I like to call him, this new person they introduced for the sake of this episode's narrative. Yeah, and it's a female student who's trouble, and he thinks Buffy and her are of the same kind. Buffy is not, but she's got a reputation with him, and so they've got extra duties for the parent-teacher conference night or whatnot. They had to put it on. It seems like a rather strange punishment, but
yeah, it's definitely like some kind of nonsense they came up with to get the energy started for the show. I don't think that any educator in their right minds would actually assign this duty to the two school miscreants.
Right, and by the way, whoever does the better job will not be expelled.
Yeah, right. I'm going to expel one of you. It's a
and if you do a good job, it's going to affect the way I talk to your mom and dad. I mean, like, such terrible. I mean, this guy's awful. I say he's awful, but in my experience, he could get fit as a teacher in the 90s. Now
that's interesting. I went to high school in the 80s, so I graduated in 91. So if that helps you know exactly how old I am, very Gen X. But I think that. I didn't have too many teachers that were this nasty. I had one principal one time who tried to carry himself like he was a tough guy, because I think that he had it in his head that the school that he was principaling was something that was in need of discipline, but it wasn't. And so he just came off as kind of a tool, and that was the end of it. But no. Schneider is terrible. And the thing that I found most interesting about this opening scene from a visual perception perspective is they open the shot with you not being able to see any of the characters. It's after you get the wide shot of the school, it cuts to this room, and you see Principal Schneider's shadow, and it's his shadow talking to you before you get into the rest of it. And I can't help but think that they were trying to imply some stuff there.
Okay, that's cool. I didn't notice that, but that's a really cool thing to note. Okay, so back at home, Buffy's having a difficult time keeping up with school and slaying, and obviously Principal Schneider is on her backside, and Joyce, her mom, is telling her, if I get a bad report, you're gonna not be able to hang out with your friends, right? So it's setting it up. And following the old metaphor you remind us of, that this is really about teenage life and teenage angst and teenage drama. I mean, this is piling and stacking it up.
Yes.
For Buffy to kind of get those teenage social and familial pressures. She's in a rock and a hard place, it feels like, at least for her, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Cut to external, not in her home any longer. It's nighttime, and in a very explosive way, there's a new vampire shows up. His name comes bowling into town, and
knocks over the town sign. He knocks over the town sign, which I think is supposed to let us know exactly how much of a wrecking ball he is.
Well, it's great, and it's a perfect way because he is in this episode. He comes off as a punk rock iconoclast. We use that word iconoclast, but just to remind people of what it means is someone who tears down the icons or what is venerated.
Right.
Usually, it's non-traditional people who you might even think of the word radical. Although, Alan, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the fact that radical, or from the Latin radix, means to go back to the source or root, which is with the same.
No, I didn't know that.
Is radish. Yes.
Interesting.
So radical doesn't mean wildly progressive or something like that. It means to go back to the sources.
Interesting. I did not know that. That's actually fantastically interesting. What I think is really interesting about what you just said is he's an iconoclast, and now he's going to walk in a room with vampires, and he's going to say something that further demonstrates him being an iconoclast. And I did not catch that until you just now said it.
Well, yeah, because the whole thing, if you remember the last season, right? The big bad was the master, and there was this anointed one. And they actually talked about they were members of this order of Aurelius, and they're like religious vampires. They're very like mystical but very hierarchical and all that jazz.
Right.
And there's a lot of talk that's going on alongside the anointed one with this one vampire's blowing a lot of bluster and steam about what's going to happen on a night of Saint Vigius, which is, if you look it up, it's October the 4th, Alan, by the way, if you look it up. Oh. Saint Vigius was a time in this vampire religious order, the Order of Aurelius, that harkened back to a time when vampires, basically, I don't know, meleeed towns in the east, in kind of the Eastern Europe or something like that.
Sure.
And it's seen as a significant mystical time, and they're preparing for it. And this, I've been there at other Saint Vigius days, and I was there at the crucifixion, and then Spike walks in, and
he said, "No, this guy, what he actually says is, it'll be the greatest event since the crucifixion." And I was there.
He was there. And Spike comes in and so good. It's so good. Do you want to say it?
So good.
Say it?
Oh, please.
No, when he comes in, he starts laughing, right? He calls shade. Yeah, oh please. Yeah.
If every vampire who said he was at the crucifixion,
it would have been like Woodstock. And he goes, and I was actually at Woodstock. And then he goes off to talk about tripping on the blood of some hippie.
Right.
Which is fun. So, yeah, he's an iconoclast. He doesn't care for the sacred hierarchy of the Slayer order, of the Watcher order, of High School order, or even the vampire religious elites. All of it to him is gobbledygook.
Yeah. You're that anointed guy.
That's right. Yeah. Right. So, yeah, there you go. So we cut back, and now the Scoobies, the Buffy and friends, are preparing for the parent-teacher conferences. And that's when we get to see the awkward and funny and humorous exchange between Jenny Calendar and Giles. Romance brewing.
That's right.
They come to when they show up, they're both like in very nerdy fashion in the know, and they both tell Buffy, "Hey, Saturday, just so you know, it's the night of Saint Vigius. It's Ramadan or it's Mardi Gras. It's coming."
Right.
They explain a little bit more, and Buffy isn't really all that impressed. But one thing is funny in there is, what does Jenny say? Like, Giles says she was doing some research. Surfing her computer.
Right.
She says to him, you have to read something that's been written after 1066, right?
That's exactly right. Right.
But there, it's love. It's sweet. So
if Buffy can survive parent teacher night, she'll see what she can do about Saturday. Which is when Jenny wants them to hang out, right?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So where we go from there? See here, Buffy.
Now wait. Before we go on, there are two more things that happen in that earlier scene with Spike and the other vampires I want to make sure we touch on.
Yes.
One is we learned that Spike has killed 2 previous Slayers.
That's right, 2.
And the other thing is we meet his girlfriend.
Oh, yes. What? Man, look at me. I've had too much coffee. I'm skipping right over her. Drusilla.
Drusilla.
Played by Juliet Landau, the daughter of the well-known Martin Landau. And Drusilla is sort of wackadoo, right? I mean,
yes,
she has some sort of vampiric disease where she's kind of emaciated and hungry and needing to feed, but she's got some sort of mental trauma, angst, or maybe even disassociative sense. I mean, she's kind of off, right, the entire time we know her.
Right.
So Spike plays a sort of love-struck nursemaid to her, wants to care for her all the time, and she's sort of got this weird psychic energy, kind of this weird kind of. I mean, it's a mystical world with a mystical vampire, but even still a sort of mystical sensibility about her.
Right.
And they did really great camera work where I think there's a cut on one of their. She cuts his face and licks Spike's blood, and then they both turn their heads to look at the camera.
Yes.
It's and I just know both of those actors are such nerds. They loved it so hard. You can tell they were eating it up.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Chewing up the scenery. That's what James Marsters does sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They so they're the wonderful. They have completely overshadowed all the other vampires in this room, including the anointed guy.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. Yeah, I think at some point very soon we cut to the Bronze, and Buffy's trying to hang out and do her thing because that's her problem: social life and school and how to balance. And she's there at the Bronze, and she's studying French, I believe. They're studying there, and Spike is now hanging out and watching. There's going to be a little bit of raid, right? Spike stays in the shadows and watches as, I believe, the one who kind of is the vampire who's going to get his butt whipped is the one who claims to be at the crucifixion, right?
Right.
So they attack someone, fights happen. This gets Buffy fighting the vampires, and Spike just watches it. Then Spike reveals himself and goes, "Hey, I'm going to kill you on Saturday."
Right.
And then on the way out, he bumps into Sheila, that's the name, of quote unquote the problem child who Buffy's supposed to work with to make the parent teacher night a great affair. And we know she's a bad kid because she started smoking when she was 5. Willow tells us.
Right.
So or in 5th grade or something, right? So yeah, but she runs into Spike out in the alley, and then it cuts. We don't see anything that really happens.
Right.
You know, you think maybe he bit her, maybe he offered her a cigarette. Not sure.
This is actually one of the better Buffy one-liners when she's fighting this vamp that Spike has sent to so that you can see her fighting. You know.
Yeah.
When he shows up in the alley, the guy who was there at the crucifixion, he says Slayer, and she says Slayee.
Absolutely. I love those, man. It's so good. When she gets back, she tells Giles about Spike, and he doesn't recognize Spike by her description. But that sends him down the rabbit hole of research. Let's see here.
Perhaps he went by another name in the past, is what Spike says. Or pardon me, what Giles says. And then Angel walks in.
Angel walks in, and that's where we have I think we really do have some cute, funny, well, maybe possibly kind of gag-worthy, annoying relationship stuff between Buffy and Angel. She says, "I was at the Bronze." He's like, "Oh, you were at the Bronze? I didn't think you were going to the Bronze." She's like, "You've been dating for 200 years. Don't you?
Right.
You'd know by now what it means when a girl says she's not going to go somewhere or something like that."
Yeah, right.
And then like, great point.
Maybe she'll go somewhere.
I've been bringing it up every episode. Like, he's been alive for 200 years. Act like he knows something, right?
Yeah. Well, clearly he doesn't, and he's going to continue to kind of come off like he doesn't know things in this episode. And in fact, when we get to the first confrontation between Spike and Angel, I got a lot to say. But keep going. Yeah.
Well, so I think Giles then finds out that Spike was once referred to as William the Bloody, which is
that's right.
Which on this side of history. Not to foreshadow too much, but on this side of history sounds awful when someone's called somebody the Bloody. Later, we're going to find out, that means something different. But William's Bloody, he's killed the 2 Slayers. Like, that's where the Spike moniker comes from because of torturing someone with a railroad spike. And so there's, like, now people are starting to get worried about who this Spike is, right? It's now like, this is serious business. And is it there? Or is it later that we find out that Spike was related to or sired by Angel?
It's later. It's in that first conversation between Spike and Angel?
Well, we at least know when they reference his age that he's a little younger than Angel.
Right. That's right.
Giles finds some comfort in that.
Right.
Later, it's Thursday night. This little overview is telling me it's Thursday night. So we know Saturday's coming. We have the Scoobies. Now they're not preparing for the parent-teacher conference. Now they're preparing for Saturday with the battling. So they're making weapons in the library, which is really fun because you have them like sharpening stakes and talking.
Yep.
There's Xander next to Cordelia. Cordelia is engaged. And I think Xander's got some funny line about like, do you remember when we used to talk, like when we used to just, like the thing that we would talk about was our love life or like our dating life.
Yeah, right.
And I think Cordelia says something like, well, not you.
That's right. That's right.
So they're doing this stupid thing, and he still can't catch a break with anybody. But
right,
that's what they're doing there. What else is going on?
Parents are arriving in an hour.
Oh yes, I do want to point out that whenever he has to leave, Xander and they make a point to show Xander and Cordelia reaching for the veggie tray that she's been making, reaching for bell peppers, like they couldn't wait to eat one. And she sticks her head back in the library and goes, "No," and then they had to drop the food. I'm like, yes, I get teenagers are hungry. No, they're not fighting over each other to eat bell peppers. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. How much sugar did you use?
Eliminate sugar?
And eliminate. Yeah.
Yep.
So there are a lot of things that Buffy did in the preparation for this that are clearly like either good intentions that she didn't quite fulfill or whatever. Like it's clear that she tried really hard and forgot a few things, and I think that her anxiety is building as a result of that.
Absolutely. So they're having the parent teacher night. It's all going on, and the whole plan is to keep Joyce, Buffy's mother, away from Principal Snyder. And Principal Snyder's walking around trying to get her. And Willow's like, "Have you seen the library? Have you seen the janitor's closet? How about the other janitor?"
Yeah, right, exactly.
And that's all kind of fun and all sort of like really ridiculous, but it's fun. And at some point, Joyce shows up saying, "Well, I think I've seen this every inch of the school and every locker, and I've still yet to talk to one of your teachers." And Principal Snyder finally is wise, walks over his little pad folio and pulls her aside very menacingly, which, I'm sitting here thinking, the event looks like a very lovely event. And he said, if the event goes well, it'll reflect on how I talk to your parents. But all too eager. And this is where you could see he's just a sadist. I mean, he's all too eager to even let Buffy know, I am going to get you in.
Yeah, 100%.
He's probably the most evil character in the episode because he's supposed to have a soul at any rate. Did you notice? Okay, so now, so Joyce comes out and Buffy's standing next to Willow, and Joyce comes up and says, "Let's go now." And she's in trouble.
Yes.
Then you get to see Principal Snyder happy about it.
Yeah.
And he goes up, and here's the weirdest thing to me. He turns off the lights while everyone is still sitting there. Did you notice that?
I didn't notice that, but that actually plays into what I was saying earlier about him being a shadow at the top. I think that they're trying to visually suggest that Principal Snyder is connected to something else in town. Like I think they're trying to suggest to you that Principal Snyder is worse than just the principal. Like there's something else going on there.
Yeah, I think.
And I don't know that totally plays out in the rest of the episodes, but I think that was the intention.
I think you're onto something. So because I was thinking when you said that about the rest of the episodes, myself, I don't think they do that. But in this one, when we get to the end, there's another nod to some sort of secrecy. But
yeah.
So the way that the set is set, there's like an upper layer by the windows, and there's a step down to where the food was. So Buffy was standing there, and Joyce takes her away from there. They're going to leave the school. Principal Snyder gleefully walks up to that second level, and it's like a bay of windows, and parents and kids are sitting. And he turns the lights off of them, and none of them react, by the way. They all act like, and then very shortly thereafter, Spike and his gang of St. Vigius vampires break through the windows.
Right.
The lights being off is sort of a strange little MacGuffin-y type thing, because what it does is it serves to kind of protect people from really seeing the vampire faces being vamped out.
That's exactly right. Right. So, but every one of them are vamped out. Like none of them are human faced. Right.
They're all vamped out, and it, sorry, I love the episode, but Buffy throwing a chair at Spike, and they fall over like a set of bowling pins, I'm like, come on, but nevertheless, parents start running like cattle. Cordelia and Willow, I think they escaped some janitor's closet. Joyce is with other parents and Principal Snyder, and Buffy's like, she's going to spring into Slayer action, and she does that. Meanwhile,
the most interesting thing about this little bit to me is that Buffy totally takes charge of everyone, including the adults, and they all just sort of let her.
Yeah, I thought a lot about that, actually. I didn't think, a lot about it, but when I watched it several times, I thought to myself, that's often just how leadership happens, though, right? And it's often how it happens. They listen to her. She seems to be competent, strong, and knows what she's talking about. And so they listen. The one who's the least leadership-oriented is Principal Snyder.
Yes.
He's panicked, and in the room where he's barricaded in with Joyce, she takes charge. Joyce takes charge.
Right.
Yeah, right. Pretty cool. And, I think there's even don't they even talk smack to each other? I mean, you're just like your daughter or whatever. I see where she gets it from. And
yes,
Joyce is kind of like, well, you know what? You could go suck an egg, basically, pal. My daughter's strong. She's not afraid, that kind of thing.
Right.
So they're in the science room. Xander, Giles, and Jenny Calendar, they're in the library, and Willow and Cordelia are in the utility closet. Xander is told, go get Angel.
Yep.
That guy's never around when you need him. Never around.
Slamming on Angel. That's hilarious.
I can't believe when I was in high school, I thought Angel was so cool. He's so lame. Anyway, so Buffy's in command, tells him to stay put, and then she starts going through the air ducts. What's the first movie that really made big use of air ducts? Is it Die Hard? I mean,
it is Die Hard, and I think this is the equivalent of Die Hard in the Buffyverse. I do.
I'm always thinking every time I see air ducts, I'm like, they're always cleaner than I think they probably are.
That's right.
They're more spacious than I think they are. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
All right. Well, Xander, I'm gonna tee you right up because I think this is where you want to chime in. Xander, not chime in. I think this is where you have a lot of thoughts. Xander returns to school with Angel. And Angel's all vamped out, and Xander is under, his he's got him, right?
Yep. And yeah. Angel is trying to pretend that Xander is his prey, so that the other vampires will let him pass, as opposed to thinking that he's not on their side. And this is when we get all kinds of information about the relationship between Angel and Spike. We find out that Spike says something to the effect of, "Hey man, you are my sire, you are my Yoda," And we find out later that Angel didn't directly sire Spike. Like in a future episode, we're going to find out that Angel sired Drusilla.
Right.
And Drusilla sired Spike. So Angel's like a grand sire or something in that scenario.
I don't think they had him out by this point, but
yeah, I don't think that. Well, I know for positive that they did not intend for Spike to be in more than one more episode.
Right.
They were going to kill him off in the next episode, but the reaction to Spike was so powerful.
Another example of that is in Stranger Things. Joe Keery, the actor who plays Steve, he is the bad guy boyfriend in season 1 who becomes best friends with the younger kids. He's got the big hair.
Yeah.
The directors and the writers and people on that show loved the actor so much. Everyone loved him so much. They brought Steve Harrington. They wrote him into the whole show. That's what happened with Spike, with James Marsden. Yeah, and one thing I will say about David Boreanaz playing Angel, he's the old vamped out. He goes, Spike. And it's the first time you can really hear his Jersey accent, wherever he's from.
Yeah.
Spike. Hey, yo, Spike.
Well, going back at it with Marsters playing Spike, he calls Angel Angelus,
right,
instead of Angelus, which is how it's pronounced in just about every other episode.
Yeah,
and I think, and I actually heard a commentary about this, that when they were on set, James Marsters actually looked around and said, "Hey, how am I supposed to say this?" And one of the producers told him the wrong way.
Yeah,
it
makes sense. I mean, Angelus is a Latinization of. I mean that doesn't track. That doesn't track 200 years prior. It does in Ireland. It doesn't track. But cool, whatever.
Yeah. Totally agreed.
And he said he offers him a bite, right? He goes, "I want to have a bite before I eat him." It's kind of a weird little. Want to sip out of my straw?
Yeah, right.
And as they're about to go in, it's about to go in, right?
Yep.
He actually throws him a haymaker, punches Angel, and that's when he's like, "Are you kidding?"
That's when all this comes out. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't Are you kidding me? That's where he's like, "You were my sire, you were my Yoda, man." And he goes, "I know that you basically are." He could smell the soul on him or whatever. And he goes, bring your sad sack business to me, and he's really upset, and they're having a, yeah, I guess it's an argument where they're giving exposition about their past, as you say.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I really like about Buffy in general is they do a pretty good job of figuring out how to deal with exposition dumps in a way that feel like it is moving the plot forward, even if it's not.
Yeah.
We've seen that twice now in this episode. The first time is actually maybe 3 times in this episode. The 3 times I can think of where they do expositional dumps that don't really move the story forward, but they don't feel like exposition dumps, are Angel in the library when he gives everyone the insight that, he used to go by William the Bloody. Another time is what you're talking about right now, where it's we're finding out more about Spike and his relationship to Angel. Previous to this, there's like a throwaway line that I think is really, really funny, but is definitely just there for exposition. But because it's funny, I think they get away with it. And it's Sheila says something to Buffy like, "Did you really burn down a school?"
Yeah,
a school building, and Buffy says, "Well, not just one school building."
Right. Yeah, that is a humorous, and they're very good at that. Very cheeky. Love that.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's there, like I say, to like make sure people know who these characters are. Like, I think the business about Buffy burning down schools needs to be there so that you have an understanding of why Principal Snyder is such a jerk to her. Otherwise it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I still think I think it's a little bit much, but still.
Yeah, it is way too much. It is way too much.
Well, now.
All right, so now we get back to Buffy in the school building, and she finds Sheila, and she thinks Sheila's going to help her.
Yeah, and Sheila's vamped out with an axe. Creep behind her. So there's a couple weapons at play. Sheila's got an axe. It's one of those axes that hanging behind glass for firefighters. I don't see those existing anywhere anymore. It seems highly problematic. It would be hanging in a school. But we are living in a post-Columbine, post-many school shooting world. Maybe that would have been there, but that's where it comes from. And Spike's got himself like a bow staff or a long rod or something. And at very, very short order, Buffy and Spike have a face-off. And I think she even says it this way. She says something about, "Why so weapony?" It's a very Buffy thing to say. And he's just like, "I just like it is all." And they're about to have a battle. And he's like besting her, only to have Joyce show up, find that axe, and wonk him on the back of the head with the axe. So it's just good symmetry, because it's showing the strength of the women.
That's right.
To which, I think that's actually how he responds. Women,
Yeah, right. And Joyce says something that's going to come back in a future episode. "You stay away from my daughter," right? Or "Get your hands off my daughter." I don't remember exactly how the line goes, but it gets repeated in a future episode, whatever that line was.
Yeah. Well, at this point, they win, and you get her like a vote of approval. Like, "Hey, listen, I don't care what that principal says. You have been courageous, and you are strong, and you know how to protect yourself, and any person who can do that's right by me," kind of thing.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Snyder is talking to the police chief, and this is where, your shadow figure kind of comes up, right?
Yeah. I think that, again, I'm not sure that this totally plays out in future episodes to where we get a real sense of it, but he's clearly connected. Snyder's in the next season is clearly connected to the mayor, who's the big bad of season 3. But I don't think we ever really understood how or why or what their relationship was, other than it feels like Snyder's just a flunky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a very bureaucratic figure, and if there's any interest that the bureaucracy of Sunnydale has in keeping information about the vampires at bay, it is that they're on the hellmouth and they don't want to have this bad reputation, or they want to, especially because you find out the mayor's part of it all.
Right.
And so theoretically, that's why he says to the police chief, this is a gang on PCP, which is not the first time he says PCP is his possible answer for it in the episode.
Right.
But the police chief's like, "I wonder if people are going to believe it." And Snyder's like, "Well, would you rather me tell the truth?" So, there's been some more stuff that's happened.
Sure.
But I like your point in theory about the shadow figure stuff. I mean, I didn't think about that. So I think that's interesting. And
so now everyone in sort of our denouement, everyone's sort of wandering away from the school. We see Giles and Jenny going away, and we see Buffy and Joyce leaving, and they have their conversation that's so empowering.
Yeah.
And we even see Angel and Xander leaving, and they seem to be getting along for possibly the first time in this
What's
episode.
A sire?
But we do have that moment. What's a sire from Xander, where he's trying to figure out what exactly Angel's relationship to Spike is. But then we get the one of the funniest bits in this episode, in my opinion, which is that Willow and Cordelia, who also typically don't like each other, are still in the janitor's closet and don't know that everything's wrapped up.
Right. And it looks like they're going to be there all night long, basically.
Yeah.
And while Willow is trying to speak rationality, Cordelia is praying, and Cordelia is like, like I'll stop doing this and I'll never do that. Of course, unless I'm grumpy because it's my time of the month. And she tells me,
unless they really deserve it, right?
Yeah, you or anyone else can say anything about that. It was
right.
Actually sweet, actually.
It is.
Yeah.
Can you ask him for some aspirin? Because it's giving her a headache, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
now on Spike's end, he goes back to that factory where the Anointed One is and the Saint Vigilant or the Lord of Aurelius people are. And there's Drusilla still. And this is, I think, the most important part of the episode. A Slayer with friends. He's never encountered a Slayer with friends.
Right.
He's killed two, but he's never seen a Slayer with friends.
Right.
And I think that's really part of the answer to the problem that she's facing. And there's so much of the problem that she's facing. Now,
and then
go ahead.
Good. Oh, okay. So now we get to, from a continuity perspective, one of the things that I thought was a really interesting decision. So much has been made of the Anointed One over the last, how many episodes have we seen him in now? Maybe 5 or 6, something like that. And he was trained by the Master, and we think he's going to be a big deal because of the prophecy and everything else. But Spike ultimately decides that he doesn't want to kowtow to this guy, and he basically takes the kid, tosses him in a cage, which is handily available.
Right. Is it a praise cage? Is it a go-go cage? Is it,
what is it? And then it's thankfully tied to a chain that's attached to the ceiling for him to be able to raise the guy up in the air. And then, of course, the Anointed One encounters the sunlight that's coming through an open window near the ceiling, and this burns him to death. And the Anointed One gets carried away in a little wisp of ash, and that's the end of the Anointed One. We never see him again in this series. He never comes back.
He also demanded penance from Spike, and so this is another iconoclastic moment.
Yes.
So I think, probably at this point, the writing of the show is just going to we're going to do away with the weird vampire religious people. We're going to move on. They introduce Spike to do it, and he's just such a good character that he ends up becoming the most developed character, in terms of a story arc.
Sure. Beginning to
end. And as many have heard me say, I've reflected on him in a piece of writing I published.
Tell me about that.
Oh, well, it's from this chapter in a book called Theology and the Undead. And my chapter it's edited by Kim Paffenroth and John Moorhead, 2 religious scholars. And mine was called Vampires Are People Too, Personalism in the Buffyverse. And one of the things that when you reflect on any Whedon verse material is that Whedon is an atheist absurdist. That's his own term for himself. But he plays with concepts that are often very, very Christian sacred, but devoid of transcendent meaning. So what I'm trying to say is he sometimes talks about certain things that really can really make sense with a theological starting point, or he'll invert the theology, and I don't think intentionally. So what he does with the vampire is he says that the vampire, and I've said this before here, but the vampire is basically a corpse. The soul is gone, or the whatever that is, the soul is gone. And what set up shop is, and Spike over time, not to spoil everything. Of course, you should know if you're listening to this, you've probably seen it.
Yeah.
He gets his soul back at the end.
Right.
And before he gets his soul back, he gets a chip in his brain that basically makes him more virtuous and more ethical, yet it is still not his metaphysical soul. And and along the way, when he gets the chip that prohibits him from doing the bad stuff and lets him be more virtuous, he's becoming more human. He's becoming more of a person. And ultimately, he becomes fully a person again. No, not just a demon, but a person when he receives soul. And it really plays into the concept of personhood is developed by the ancient Christian thinkers to talk about the Trinity. The personhood we take for granted to mean human, but it's not the case that that's how the word was first used in Greek or Latin. It was a word meant to describe one's like social role in the world. A person is not a human individual per se. A person is a set of relations.
Right.
After reflection on the Trinity, this is a lot of history and a lot of theology, it became the idea that humans happen to be persons, which endowed individuals with dignity and worth. So personalism is a philosophical concept, and basically the opposite of a person, I think, is kind of falls into the realm of the diabolical, completely parasitic. Because to be a person means to be a self in relationship to another self. That would be a Kierkegaardian way of describing it. But you do so through acts of self-giving. So I exist because of you and you exist because of me, but we give for each other's sake. That's what being a person means. Where the vampire is completely like a parasite upon that, right? So a Spike becomes this fully fledged person in his story arc, and they try to come up with the concept of personalism in the soul without Christian theology, but really all they do is just mirror it in their own way.
Sure.
There's a lot more to be said about it, but at any rate, that's why he's such an interesting character, because they go from him being this all the way to one who actually gives his life over for the world.
Right.
And becomes the fullest sense of a person.
We'll talk about more of that as we see more of Spike. And I want to, and I don't want to give too much away about this very topic of his entire being, but I do want to mention very quickly that we find out in a future episode that he's called William the Bloody because of his bloody awful poetry.
Yeah.
And I think that they actually had that set up in his backstory before this episode. And the reason for that is because there's a Spike line in this episode where he says, "Fee fi fo fum, I smell the blood of a nice, ripe girl."
Okay, well, you're picking up some things I didn't pick up on.
The other thing that I'll say going along with what you're talking about right now with him becoming a whole person is near the end of the entire series, after he's gotten his soul back and right before, like literally the episode before he sacrifices himself to save the world, he goes to a poetry slam and he reads some of his poetry, and it's good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's good stuff.
So I think that the creativity part of it is part of what they're using to represent him being a whole person.
Yeah. Because when he is William the Bloody, well, we'll get into that. When he's William the Bloody, he's immature. He's not fully formed. But yeah, so that's what I find beautiful about that. I think it's interesting to think about, and probably people anyone's listening to this because they like Buffy, they're probably not into thinking about it like this nerdy level to say, I think it's interesting that in the Whedonverse we have religious vampires, right?
Right.
Because I think I think that you can't get away from the fact that humans are religious creatures. Like even Whedon, who's an atheist absurdist, I think all we do is we replace our religious tendencies. We replace the objects of our faith. Like we are ritualistic creatures. And so even this vampiric, these diabolical persons, these parasitic persons, they're finding things to organize their life, rituals to make meaning out of, even if it's just in ceremonially recognizing something that happened in the past. It gives us meaning and focus and shape. I just think that we can't get outside. At least to date in human history, we have proven more to be religious than not religious. I don't know anyone who's not religious. They're religious about something.
That's exactly right. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So anyway, we're off to the races. Inca and Mummy Girl.
Oh yeah.
That's next. So yeah, there's gonna be some good ones.
Yeah, I like it. We'll talk about it next week. But Inca Mummy Girl has a lot of good stuff in it, especially for the Xander and Willow relationship. Can't wait.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else in this one?
I think we've covered everything. Again, I'm looking forward to our future conversations about Spike. And frankly, I'm looking forward to some future conversations about Angel, because while he is a dud of a character right now, I think that he actually becomes more interesting here in a few weeks.
Okay. I bet that's true. And I do find that as I analyzed all that stuff about the soul and the person and the demons, I do think that Angel is the one that's the hard one to actually analyze. And I think that's because what does it mean that he is a vampire, which must mean the demon has set up shop.
Right.
But he's got a soul. They
He's
never
got both.
They never parsed that out.
Right. Right. They didn't. So, all right.
All right, man.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Take
Talk
care.
soon.